Thanks, Attorney General. You grew up in Lincolnwood, Illinois, if I'm not mistaken, at least part of your life.
That's true.
It's not far from Highland Park, is it?
That's also true.
And we know what happened last 4th of July when the people of Highland Park gathered for a 4th of July parade. A gunman went on the roof of a business downtown and fired off 83 rounds into the crowd in 60 seconds. Even the armed good guys, the policemen who were there trying to protect the public, had trouble locating that person and certainly, sadly, could not have the time to respond to what he had done until it was finished. When he was finished, there was an 8-year-old, Cooper Roberts, who will be paralyzed for life. There was a young man, 2-year-old, Aidan McCarthy, who became an orphan because both of his parents were killed. 7 total lives were lost, 50 people were injured. It is hard for me to imagine that some disciple of originalism believes that our Second Amendment envisioned what happened in Highland Park. To think that there is a weapon out there, a military-style weapon, and the rounds and clips that are available to fire off multiple rounds into innocent crowds, just to me makes little or no sense when you read the basic language of the Second Amendment. And so Congress did something, and I want to credit Senator Cornyn for being a participant in this effort, a leader in this effort, with Senator Murphy of Connecticut, to try to pass a bill to make it better. The bipartisan Safer Communities Act addressed issues of straw purchasing, which we have discussed before, the terrible death of Ella French, a Chicago policeman, because of the straw purchase made in the state of Indiana, and this situation with the shootings of innocent individuals in Highland Park. I'd like to ask you, what have you seen, if anything, that's changed for the better since we passed our law?
I think it's a very important law, and I'm grateful to the members who sponsored it and to the overall Congress that passed it. It's done several things for us. First of all, it has, as you said, established a standalone crime for straw purchasing and a standalone crime for trafficking in illegal weapons. We have already—
Are these being prosecuted?
Yes, in both cases, we have already brought trafficking cases. I think we already have 2 gun trafficking cases and several straw purchasing cases as a consequence of this law. In addition, the law provided for enhanced background checks for people under 21, and we have largely completed the process of making those possible so that juvenile records that disclose prohibited conduct and make somebody a prohibited possessor would now be identified. That's another thing we've done. The statute also provided funds under the BURN program and additional programs for violence intervention and for helping states deal with red flag laws so that people who have been subject to a court order barring them from obtaining a gun, we would be able to get those kind of systems provided. And we've already given out grants in both of those areas.
Senator Graham basically challenged me, and I accept the challenge, to show as much concern about the gun deaths, to show as much concern about fentanyl deaths in this country, and I want to do that. He noted, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that the #1 cause of death, people 18 to 45, is drug overdose. I don't know if it's fentanyl specifically, but a drug overdose. And I know that reality. But the #1 cause of death to children under the age of 18 is gun violence in America, too. We can do both. We must do both. So let's address the fentanyl issue for a minute. We had a hearing in this committee 2 or 3 weeks ago, which talked about the social media platforms and what they are peddling to Americans, particularly to our children across America. There were mothers sitting near where you're sitting today who brought color photographs of their children who died as a result of their trafficking of information on social media. And there's little or no responsibility accepted by these platforms. Section 230 absolves them from civil liability when they broadcast things which harm children, whether it's bullying or harassment or something as basic as this choke challenge, which unfortunately claims the lives of children as well. I think there was a general consensus on this committee, which is saying something, that we need to do something about the social media platforms. And I coincidentally had a meeting just a day or two later with Ann Wiggum from the Drug Enforcement Agency. She described for me the sale on the internet and social media platforms of phony drugs. Senator Graham made the reference to a person who thought they were buying Percocet and bought fentanyl and died as a result of it. I asked her how common this was. She said very common, and the sellers even have valet services where they will physically deliver boxes of these phony drugs to people at their homes on their porches. This is out of hand. Do you believe that we need to do more to regulate and control the use of social media platforms that are currently exploiting families and children across America?
Senator, I agree with both you and Senator Graham with respect to how horrible this situation is. I have personally met with the families of children and teenagers and young adults and even the elderly who have taken these pills, often thinking that they're taking Adderall or oxycodone or Percocet, a prescription drug, but when in fact it is filled with fentanyl. And as the DEA administrator's testimony demonstrated, 6 out of 10 of those pills are a fatal dose. The cartels that are creating these pills and that are distributing them within the United States are the most horrid individuals you can imagine. And unfortunately, they are doing it on social media, advertising as if they are prescription pills. So the DEA has a program of going out to the social media companies and urging them to advise DEA when they see this, and advising.
Ms. Wiggum told me that when they approach the social media and ask for the algorithms so that they can get to the root cause of this death and destruction, these social media platforms plead Section 230 and refuse. What do we do?
Well, I think we do have to do something to force them to provide information to search their own platforms for sales of illegal drugs. This is
I tell you, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think Section 230 has become a suicide pact. We have basically said to these companies, you are absolved from liability, make money, and they're at it in overtime. And deaths result from it, and we have a responsibility. I think the committee really spoke to it. We may see it differently, but on a bipartisan basis. And I've spoken to Senator Graham, and I want to make sure that when we agree, it also is publicized. We both feel very strongly that this committee needs to be a venue to take on this issue. I hope we have your support and the support of the president when we do that.
You certainly have our support with respect to finding a better way to get the social media companies, whether it's civil or criminal, to take these kind of things off their platforms, to search for them, to not use algorithms that recommend them. I totally agree with that, Senator.
Thank you. Senator Graham?